Not a bad few months has it been for Lamine Yamal. We welcome in Alex Kirkland and Sid Lowe. Sid, I suppose no surprise that Barcelona got this done, but they'll be very happy that they did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, bear in mind that the context of this is the way that Lionel Messi walked away when they thought they had a way of making him stay. And so Barcelona will be very, very conscious they wanted to ensure that Lamine Yamal wouldn't walk. It's a very long deal, which I think gives them a degree of security as well. I think it's a deal that they will anticipate that if he continues to develop at this rate, if he continues to improve, that they'll be redoing this in 2 or 3 years' time. That it won't be a contract that sees him all the way through the 6 years of its duration, but it gives them that protection and gives them that confidence, and they're absolutely delighted.
And Alex, obviously the details haven't been revealed. We're talking money, but like the number 10 shirt, is that in the mix as well?
It sounds like it is. That's the reporting that's coming out of Barcelona, that he will be potentially inheriting the number 10 shirt, which of course means a lot. Couldn't mean any more at Barcelona being Lionel Messi's shirt. The comparisons with Messi and Lamine Yamal are constant. We can't help it because of the things that Lamine Yamal does on the pitch remind us of Messi so frequently. And so, yeah, the number 10 shirt would be a big deal. We've seen shirt numbers kind of become a weight around some players' necks in the past. I don't think that's going to be the case with Lamine Yamal. It's great news for Barcelona all round. You've got to handle these things carefully, of course. You know, Barca have had this problem in the past. Talk about Messi. They had that situation where, in order to keep Messi, they had to keep, giving him new deals, raising the wages. That brings the overall kind of wage of the squad up as other players want more as well. And that's how Barca got into trouble last time. So, of course, you've got to be a little bit careful. But no, the bottom line is great news that he's staying long term. He's the best young player in the world.
Speaking of wages, Sid, an interesting post from his father. What was it, 19.2?
19.3, yeah, an Instagram post from his dad. We were trying to find out how much he was going to be paid. Now, obviously, the question now is, do we trust his dad? Is he telling us the truth? Is he actually talking about the wage? Is he allowing himself some plausible deniability? But I think the fact that on the day that Lamine Yamal renews his contract, that his dad puts up an Instagram post with him and his son sitting there at the Palau alongside the Camp Nou, and it just says 19.3. I don't know about you, I wouldn't be that pleased if my dad was telling the entire world what my salary was. Mind you, I suppose if I was earning 19.3 million euros a year, I'd be pretty happy that everybody knew.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't be with us. OK, Shaq, here's the deal. You're 17 years of age. You are living the dream, quite literally at the moment, probably going to win the Ballon d'Or, best player in the world at the moment. You've got this extraordinary wage bump. Here's the concern. Any teenager with that sort of instant fame, instant money is going to be distracted.
Yeah.
How do you stop it? How do you try and help him? What's the best way to keep him on track?
The truth is, it just comes down to personality. And you've seen any number of young players kind of come through.
This isn't just soccer related, isn't it?
This is just in general. But in regards to the game, you've seen any number of players over the years come through and kind of get lost in everything that comes with being a professional footballer or the entrapments, etc. But then there are those who... It doesn't matter. The wage does not matter. It's all about playing the game. And from a footballing perspective, from a football club perspective, that's a little bit of the gamble that you're taking. Exactly what does this bump in wages do to the personality? Now, the truth is, as much as that's a little bit of a guessing game, Lamine Yamal has given you no reason to think that he's going to be any different. That, to his interview and in his own words, it's like playing the Xbox or whatever was the other game. That's
the old Commodore.
the old
Atari.
He's playing Atari. He's playing Space Invaders and Atari.
Handheld one.
Pong.
That's just how he is. And the truth is, and I am as reluctant as anyone to draw comparisons between Lamine Yamal and Lionel Messi. But both of them, when they play, it's as though they're on the playing ground. That they're having fun in doing what they're doing, and that's the be-all and end-all. And that, for me, says that this is a gamble every penny worth taking.
Steve, I think when I was growing up, like that once-in-a-generation talent that everyone was kind of looking at the time was someone that you saw come through in Michael Owen, obviously.
Yep.
So young.
Yep.
As an experienced player, as a veteran, was there things that Liverpool did in particular to try and shield him, to try and help him? Or as Shaka said, this is just all down to individuals?
Well, there's two things. There's the obvious one, which is the player, the person himself.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I don't think that's a worry, because I don't believe right now that Yamal understands the enormity of how good he is and the position he's in world football. I just don't think he actually gets it yet. When he does get it, the important thing is who's surrounding him.
Sure.
And who's surrounding him in the dressing room. In the dressing room is just as important as the people that surround him outside of it. Because the experienced guys, the smart guys, if they see anything or pick up on anything, they'll be the first and should be the first to clip his wings. And as a young player, there's no question you look up to these guys.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether you're better than them, whether you're making more money than them, those are the guys you respect the most. And so that's the key. But right now, I don't think it matters, because he doesn't get it. He doesn't get where he is.
Yeah, having said that, Sid, it is quite a young, inexperienced dressing room overall, isn't it?
It is, but there's a handful of very experienced players, and I think we've seen the role this year. And actually, this is a player that I think has had a phenomenal season, and this is one of the reasons. I think we've seen the role played this year by Inigo Martinez in particular at centre-back, but in terms of that leadership, in terms of taking responsibility. And I was listening to you talk about how you deal with a young player and what older players do and how that relationship shifts. And it brings to mind the way in which the relationship between Lamine Yamal and Robert Lewandowski has shifted. There were a couple of times last year when Lewandowski kind of called out Lamine Yamal on the pitch and had a bit of a go at him. And I think one of the things that's happened this year is actually you get two things. One is, as Steve's talking about, you get the ability of an experienced and very talented and hugely successful veteran player, like someone like Lewandowski, who can tell a young kid to change certain things, to do things in a different way. But actually, I think we've seen the other side of it as well this year, which is I think we've seen Robert Lewandowski become aware that this teenager is about to be the top dog. And so he, I think, has changed his behaviour, and he has been less kind of overtly critical and less direct. And obviously, as well, the level of performance has meant that he's had less reason to. But I think it's very, very interesting how that dynamic can shift. And so the power can end up, if you like, kind of transferring from the veteran players to the young players, in part because everybody knows it's not just about how he's playing now. It's that this guy is going to be the face of this club and the key player of this club for the next 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years.
Today, cutting in from the right onto his left foot, Lamine Yamal is exactly the same. But yeah, you could have picked any number of goals. Of course, he was in everyone's kind of team of the season, along with the likes of Pedri and Rafinha. And at this stage, he's already the best player in Spain. And a lot of people would say that the best player in the world. And yeah, a lot more goals like that to come between now and 2031.
Sid, what's interesting, of course, as Lamine Yamal gets a new contract, it looks like Ansu Fati will be leaving the club. This is a man, of course, who inherited that number 10 shirt from Messi, who showed so many signs of exceptional skills when he was younger, got that big injury and just hasn't been anywhere near the same player since he's come back.
Yeah, and I was thinking about Ansu when you and Alex were talking earlier about whether Lamine gets the number 10. I mean, the two things happening at the same time really lead you in that direction as well. And I think it tells you something about the pressure, not necessarily of the 10 itself, but of the fact that the 10 symbolises this idea that this is the kid that we're betting our future on. This is the kid that we think is going to be very special. And I know that right now this can seem something to look back on and laugh at, but genuinely, the first year or so of Ansu Fati's career was extraordinary. He was absolutely phenomenal. Now, I actually think he's closer than Lamine Yamal is, closer to what we were talking about earlier, what you were talking about earlier, to a player like Michael Owen. So this is a player that's really exciting because he run past people, because he seems able to score from everywhere, because he doesn't seem to miss chances, rather than because you look at him and think this is someone who is so incredibly naturally and technically gifted. Now, we never really thought that with Ansu. What we did think was that he's just so phenomenally efficient, so quick, so clever, finishes so cleanly, and that's gone. And with Ansu, obviously, there's the 2 injuries, and I also think the emotional impact of those injuries, and certainly privately, some of the people who've worked with Ansu Fati have essentially stressed the fear that this guy might never be a particularly good player again. And it's as much a psychological process as it is a physical one.
That's got to be a killer, Stevie. You come in and everything you do is right, and you're put on this pedestal. You have these 2 big injuries, and as Sid said, even though you're coming back, your body's physically ready, mentally, there is still that kind of drain to it.
You know, and there's not an answer anybody can give you as to how to get over it. You really have to have just an inbuilt mental strength to be able to forget all the problems, forget all the things you've been through. Some can do it and some can't do it.
Right.
And it's not a case of going to somebody and they give you the answer. It really is all in your hands and all between your ears. And some can recover from it and some can't. And the fact that the injury has slowed him down, a guy who, I wouldn't say relied more on pace, but obviously that was a huge part of it, it completely changes your game. And some, again, can change the game, but some psychologically can't do it.
It comes from playing video games and playing like a video game to all of a sudden thinking.
And I think that's the issue. Or that's in Ansu Fati's case, that's the challenge. And in much as we kind of applaud some of these young players for their approach, as though they're playing on the playground, they're doing things at the highest level of the game without ever having to think about it, or having to think any more than I'm on the playground with friends. And then all of a sudden, it's not. All of a sudden, you have to think through every single movement, every single thing you do on the park, and it's not at all natural to them, and they struggle with that transition.
Let's talk about levers, shall we, Alex, which we always do at this time of the year, right leading up to the transfer deadline. Will we have a season or have a summer where we don't have to talk about that? Financially, where are Barcelona? Because, of course, we've heard them speak about Luis Diaz and Marcus Rashford. In theory, have they got those finances to bring in that sort of quality player?
It looks like they're getting back to a pretty good place. And there's been some reporting in the last few days that sort of one of the last big things to fall into place, which is the sort of the VIP boxes in terms of Camp Nou's redevelopment. That's all good now. And that can now count towards Barcelona's income fully in terms of the league. And that means they've been able to make signings this summer. Of course, that doesn't mean they can go out and splash the cash left, right and centre, because they haven't got huge amounts of money to spend, but they can spend without worrying so much about what they're bringing in and how they're doing it. So yeah, it looks like being a much more positive summer, an easier summer than the last few at least.
Sid, where is this Rafinha coming in as like the false nine and Diaz going out on the left come from? Because we've discussed it over the last few days and it doesn't seem to make sense given how prolific that front three were this season.
It doesn't. When you sort of think about it from a profile point of view, you would think that, well, what you want to find is someone who can play the role that Lewandowski's played this year, or indeed the role that Ferran Torres has played this year. Because let's not forget, that's two different profiles of number nines, and they've both worked very well at different stages of the season. I do think there's a recognition at Barcelona that Lewandowski, while the numbers have been really good this year, that there's a doubt about whether that continues into next year. For the last two seasons, we've seen him have very good starts and less good second halves of the season. There's obviously his age, which is a concern as well, and so they know they need to find a replacement. And it makes me think, and this is kind of based on an analysis rather than a piece of information, but it makes me think, looking at it, is this decision to say, well, perhaps Rafinha can go through the middle, not just a technical one, but it's also market driven. In other words, you're looking at the market and thinking, well, that kind of forward that can play that role for us doesn't exist. That kind of central forward doesn't exist. So how about we use the resources we've got and bring in someone else who can play wide? And I think, you know, where this is really expressed isn't so much with Luis Diaz, but it's with the interest in Marcus Rashford. And that idea that there you get a player who can do, at least in theory, both things. Can play coming in off the wing or can play through the middle. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think either of those two are the absolute solution for Barcelona. But, of course, you can only take solutions from what's available in the market.
One last Barcelona point, Alex, with you. New goalkeeper coming in?
I mean, it's something that they need to look at, potentially, isn't it? Because you've got Ter Stegen, who's come back and hasn't looked great since coming back from that long-term injury. You've got Wojciech Szczesny, who's, I think, overperformed and outperformed everyone's expectations over the course of the season, but long-term isn't the answer. Of course, they had Iñaki Peña there as well. It seems like Flick had a look at and decided it wasn't good enough. And so long-term, you know, Szczesny, of course, came out of retirement to go to Barca. Ter Stegen not getting any younger either. So they need to look at a goalkeeper for the future. Lots of talk about Joan Garcia just down the road at Espanyol. That, of course, would be a controversial move for all kinds of reasons, with that rivalry, Garcia being a big Espanyol fan as well as a
at least for another year. And part of the speculation around Joan Garcia is that they'll sign him and loan him out, while I guess Ter Stegen kind of runs his course, or you figure out what's happening between Ter Stegen and Szczesny. Just given Szczesny's performances, and I totally understand the need, and it's a similar conversation that we've been having around Robert Lewandowski. When players get to a certain age, even when their numbers are good, you have to start to consider what does life look after that player, or when will it turn? And similarly for both goalkeepers. Chesney, as has been, we keep talking about, retired 12 months ago, but then put in this performance. So you just wonder what are the long-term implications with both those players, given their respective ages. So you understand the signing of Johan Garcia at 24 years old, with a view to a longer term for Barcelona.